Hello, everybody. It is your Professor Rocco, you boy, coming at you once again with another Age of Sigmar video. In this AoS General class, we're going to be doing a little bit of a Rocco response with a little bit of help from my friend Bradley. Say hello, Bradley.
Hello, my friends.
Wonderful. Uh, and again, we're working on the green screen thing. I think things are going good. And this Rocco response is coming from a viewer question. And I'll read it now. Hi, Rocco. I usually play Oryx, Cruel Boys especially, because I love their dirty tricks. But a faction that longs for a battle on the shelf are my Bestigor heavy beastmen. My meta here is Lumineth, Gargants, some Sylvaneth, and heavy infantry slaves to darkness. I've seen that many of my enemies rely on spells or aura buffs to get strong, and as such are deployed all clustered up. All but Gargants, that is, of course. What would you suggest to give a punch to my very fragile but very angry Bestigors? Thanks for the great video, which I commented on before. So, this video is going to be what to do about Bestigor. Our friend the Bestigor. I don't know, my wife comes up with the snappy titles. But I want to start off here first by saying Bradley is my resident Bestigor and Beast of Chaos expert. He even goes by Bradley Beastlord. He has done tournaments with Beast of Chaos. We theory craft. We have played in the past a lot of games together to get you ready for tournaments. So I have definitely going to be punting the question to Bradley because I'm an Order fanboy. I can work with strategies and things, sure, but when it comes to the nuts and bolts, which I feel this goes down to, this is going to be better suited to another expert. But, to keep me a little bit involved, I'm going to read the War Scroll for you. So, a Bestigor, they come in units of 10. They've got a good 6-inch movement, 1 wound each, 4-up save, which is honestly pretty good for a Beast of Chaos army. Bravery 6. They have cool tech on their banner, which gives them an extra inch of when they do a run or a pile-in move. And when they have a hornblower in their unit, it allows them to run and charge. So that 6-inch of movement can go pretty far, all things considered. They've got an okay weapon profile with a Despoiler Axe with 2 attacks each, a 4 to hit, 3 to wound, neg 1 ren, 1 damage. When they go against a unit with 10 or more models, they natively get +1 to hit, which saves you for command points for other things. And they reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made into units that are order. Also, they add an extra 1 attack to their attacks characteristic when they make a charge move. So it's pretty reliable in a lot of tournament metas where, especially against the Lumineth that were in that local meta, there'll be a 3 to hit, rerolling 1s, 3 to wound, and because of the changes to a certain terrain piece we'll get into later, they'll actually be Ren 2. Now, Bradley, you know synergies. That's something we've worked on. Tell me about some of these rules for Beast of Chaos that you like that could really work well with a Bestigor.
Absolutely, Rocco. One of the most important things to remember about Beasts of Chaos is where it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
As one of the bottom armies for a very long time until its recent White Dwarf update, Games Workshop has been trying frantically to fix the army. In order to do so, their initial strategy was to simply release small numbers of additional allegiance abilities for the book, as touching the points too much could easily result in the units becoming unbalanced for inclusion in allegiances that aren't Beasts of Chaos, a la Disciples of Tzeentch. Because of this, I think it's very important to be able to remember all of your rules. I created a document for use using primarily AoS reminders so that my friendly Beast Lords can avoid forgetting any of our very many important allegiance abilities, as Beast of Chaos has some of, if not the most, unique allegiance abilities in the entire game of Age of Sigmar. As a result, there are lots of strange rules interactions within the book. Uh, However, in order to buff Bestigor specifically, we're going to start by looking at the humble Bray Shaman. The Bray Shaman is a 5 wound, 6 up save, 100 point foot wizard hero, uh, level 1 caster. However, one of its most useful abilities, Infuse with Bestial Vigor, allows you to, at the start of your movement phase, add 3 inches to the move characteristic of models in friendly Bray Herd units fully within 12 inches of any friendly Great Bray Shamans until the end of that phase. So now, your Bestigor are moving 9 inches base with a run move, going up to 10 inches base plus your d6 roll, and then being able to charge shortly thereafter, giving them a very respectable threat range for a for foot infantry.
You love to see it. Okay, keep going.
Absolutely.
Keep going.
The next war scroll we'll look at is the Beastlord, a 95-point, 5 wound combat hero that is often scorned due to its 6 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, base rend 1, damage 1, which is admittedly not much. And while you typically don't want to take combat heroes, uh, I believe that the Beastlord is key in allowing your Bestigors to work successfully due to its Grisly Trophy rule. If any enemy models are slain by wounds inflicted by this model's attacks in the combat phase, you can add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made by friendly Bray Herd units fully within 18 inches of this model until the end of that phase. In addition, if any enemy heroes or monsters are slain by wounds inflicted by this model's attacks in the combat phase, you can add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by friendly Bray Herd units fully within 18 inches of this model until the end of that phase. The same unit cannot benefit from this ability more than once per phase. And so basically what that means is that if you are to, for example, fight with a Beastlord and kill an enemy model, your Bestigor, which we spoke on before against certain matchups, are 3s to hit, now 2s to wound, rend 2, damage 1, bringing their dependence up another notch, and allowing them to create gigantic amounts of damage as you throw around 31 dice for a full squad.
And I would like to add in, with the local meta here being Lumineth and Sylvaneth, there's your order, too, for rerolling ones to hit. So that becomes very reliable very quickly.
The one issue with Lumineth that Greyherd have always had is the Shining Company
Mm-hmm.
significantly impairs the ability of Bestigors to do damage. However, uh, if you are picking your fights correctly, that shouldn't be too much of a problem, especially as you're able to hand out. You're still able to hand out all-out attack on top of your +1 to hit from attacking 10 model units.
Oh, yeah. And you said with the Beastor, what was the buff again? It was +1 to wound? And then if they
Correct.
killed something, they could also give out an aura of +1 to hit?
So it's if they killed anything in
Mm-hmm.
that combat phase, it's
Okay.
+1 to wound. If it's a hero or monster, it's also +1 to hit. So you could theoretically be getting +1 to hit and wound. I wouldn't expect him to be killing a lot of enemy heroes,
Yeah.
at least not in this particular iteration, because we still want access to, which we'll go over here in a second
Oh,
for our
sure.
list. And
Like,
then the last thing that's
okay.
really important to cover here is the
Please.
Herdstone. So many of you may be familiar with the Herdstone, especially if you play Beasts of Chaos. However, what we're looking at here are several very important things that really set up Beasts of Chaos to be successful in the current meta. Primarily, its Entropic Lodestone ability, which improves the rend characteristic of melee weapons used by all Beasts of Chaos units on the battlefield by 1, uh, while the Herdstone is just in play. And then from the start of the third battle round, you're improving the rend characteristic of melee weapons used by all friendly Beasts of Chaos units on the battlefield by 2 instead of 1, giving them huge advantages to uh, anything with a very high save characteristic. However, what's really important about Bestigor is that they're fast with a 4-up save for a not entirely unreasonable price. While they're far from the most wound efficient unit in our book, we're able to utilize their hybrid ability to deal damage, move quickly, and take up large amounts of board space on 32mm bases, as sort of a tactical tool to prevent your opponent from scoring battle tactics, and while also, excuse me, making sure you're scoring plenty of objective points for yourself. Greyherd, especially out of the Beasts of Chaos races, is all about board control, and so the list I'd like to go over for you all today is doubling down on just really not letting your opponent play very much of the game, unless their idea of playing the game is killing one unit of Greyherd at a time.
I'd love to hear it.
Sure.
Hey, go on, man. Floor's yours. You got this.
Perfect. All right. So the list.
And real quickly, this list too, I'll throw it in the description of the video. Again, I'm getting better at technology, but bear with me here. All right, Bradley, kick it off.
Of course. All right, so what I have for you today is a Beasts of Chaos list. We are taking no subfaction here. There are lots of reasons to consider taking a subfaction. However, I think that for this particular style of list, you're really suited to wanting access to be able to pick your own command trait, which is why I've elected to not take a subfaction for giving Bestigor a chance.
Made me clutch my fake pearls there. No one doesn't take a sub faction anymore. This is 3.0. All right, go on, sell me on it.
Well, there is historical precedent for it. If you're familiar with the Nuge, who was able to 4-1 at LVO prior to the White Dwarf using primarily Warherd, uh, his list also did not use a subfaction for access to the same command trait that we've chosen to elect here. So our general in this list is still going to be a Dragon Ogre Shaggoth. The value proposition of a Dragon Ogre Shaggoth is just simply too much to refuse. A caster with a large amount of wounds that heals from one of his own allegiance abilities, plus there's the random heal from rolling a tie for priority, which is just a very strange thing. Uh, so we've given
I'm gonna
him
write notes as we go. Go on.
we've given him the command trait Master of Magic, which allows you to re-roll one casting, dispelling, and unbinding roll in each hero phase for that general, meaning that he's able to get magic off significantly more consistently. He's holding an Arcane Tome, which is the artifact that either makes the bearer a wizard, or if they are already a wizard, gives them an additional spell cast. And then he's elected to take the spell Hailstorm, which is a very powerful battlefield control spell, which goes off on a 6. You pick an enemy unit within 21 inches of the caster, and that unit's move, run, and charge are all halved. Uh, then we've also taken a Great Bray Shaman with the Vicious Stranglethorns spell. It's a wonderful spell that combines damage and control, forcing your opponent to make tough decisions about whether or not taking that arcane terrain is really worth it, because you're just going to be turning it into a mortal wound bomb the whole game, as it deals damage to every unit within 3 inches of that terrain feature. The next hero we have is the Trusty Slaves to Darkness Demon Prince, with the Mark of Khorne, using the Hellforged Sword and Malefic Talons.
While
You take
that's
him,
still lasting, because we know there's eventually a
yes,
book that'll change it, but until that point, throw that bad boy in there. There's no reason not to.
absolutely. While he's still legal, he's very useful for this type of list, and although he's going away in probably December, you can get a lot of mileage out of him until then. And so that Bloodslick Ground command ability, which you trigger in your hero phase, preventing until your next hero phase, uh, enemy units within 18 inches of him must have their charge rolls. This does stack with the Hailstorm spell we gave our Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, meaning you can quarter your opponent's charge rolls, making all but a 3-inch charge literally impossible for them. And then the last hero is the Beastlord. Our humble Beastlord is actually holding an artifact, the Volcanic Axe, which allows him to, on hit rolls of 6, deal a mortal wound in addition to his damage, and also increases the damage characteristic of his weapon to 2, increasing his damage output so we can get access to that very important +1 to hit and wound buff from him uh, more consistently. And now I can hear you saying right now that I've lost you, because if your Beastlord fights, then your opponent gets an election. And that's where several of our choices here in this list come into play.
Okay.
We
Go
have
on.
taken
Go
the
on.
Endless Spell, the Wildfire Taurus, a 70-point Endless Spell. It went down for some reason, despite being one of the most powerful Endless Spells in the game, with a casting value of 7, a range of 8, and a move of 12. Or maybe it's a range of 12 and a move of 8. It's something like that. What's important about the Wildfire Taurus is that
It's
uh,
effectively 20 inches by the time you're done with it all.
exactly correct. So in that first turn, it's got that 20-inch, just the model's threat range, and after it's moved, it does some damage to enemy units. It's passed over on a 2-up for D3 mortals. However, why you take it is that all units within 3 inches of it have the fight's last effect applied to them. We've also taken 2 Mindstealer Sphinxes as allies from our friends in Slaves to Darkness, which are 8-wound monsters, which at the start of your hero phase, uh, you play a fun little mini game to give out more fight's last effect to choice enemy units, allowing huge swathes of your opponent's army to be fight's last during your turn, allowing you to control the pace of your combats and prevent yourself from taking unnecessary damage during your turn. That pairs into other points of this. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I want to say because as a Deepkin fan, I love having all my stuff fight first before my opponent. Love this so far. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
Absolutely. For our Battleline choices, we have 1 unit of Dragon Ogres reinforced twice, so that's a total of 9 Dragon Ogres. While you are Bestigor heavy, my friend, it's very hard to refuse the allure of Dragon Ogres being quite possibly one of the most durable units in the game currently, with 45 wounds on a 4-up base save, tying with Bestigors for the best save characteristic in the book. Kind of sad, really. I've given them 3 war glaives and 6 ancient weapons. You can modify that to your liking. I like to give mine the 2-handed weapons on their models, but the paired ancient weapons are a lot better into units where you might be losing a damage, and are better as a bounty hunter's unit, which these Dragon Ogres are. While they're within range of the Herdstone, that 4-up ward, or excuse me, that 4-up rally keeps them absolutely and absurdly durable. And so the way I would position them, as they have a gigantic footprint, is to leave a sort of group of cluster of coherent 3, sort of behind the 6 Lotus, if you're familiar with those terms, to keep them within range of your Herdstone, or where you expect your Herdstone to be, going into either hero phase, um, in the event that all 6 of the Dragon Ogres are slain in the combat phase, or in the shooting phase, or just at all. And then our 2 other units of Battleline are going to be just 2 units of 10 Gors. They're insanely cheap, just a great tax, and while they're expert conquerors, they just do great work for controlling your objectives. They're as fast as your Bestigor, gaining the same base movement characteristic, and with a 4-up save in melee, 5-up base +1 against melee weapons with Gor-Blades Beastshields. They also run a charge, get an extra inch when they run and pile in. So they're going to be acting as sort of your second layer of screen behind your 2 units of Ogor Raiders. One of my favorite units in our entire book due to their 6-inch pregame move. This 6-inch pregame move is going to be key against any army with melee Alpha Strike or that relies on Deep Strike to uh, basically utilize scalpels to take out important auras from your army early in the game. Able to screen out uh, the vast majority of stuff like KO shooting into your heroes, etc. with that 6-inch pregame move. They can also be used to block big bases, like, for example, a Maw Crusher coming into units you really don't want them to. It increases your survivability a lot, and if your opponent doesn't have that Alpha Strike, uh, they're just nice and annoying, and in this list you have so much board control, you're going to be everywhere all at once, giving your opponent way too many bad decisions to make. Especially when you include our 4 units of 10 Bestigor. The stars of our show here, our Bestigor are going to be running around playing units, or playing the role of both sort of screen, hammer, and anvil all in one, despite being uh, 10 wound units with 10 guys. with a good honeycomb, they're all able to get into combat, especially due to their insane speed and 4-inch pylon. So if you're honeycombing them correctly, you should be able to get all 10 of them into fight, no problem. You'll want them hanging out, playing them sort of, depending on your opponent, almost somewhat conservatively as sort of a counter-striking force. Anywhere your opponent leaves himself open to sort of a countercharge, as you've basically forced them to play incredibly cagey and just sort of play a delaying game. You'll often be given first turn playing a list like this, as where 100 quadrillion drops. And so as a result, you should be practicing your openings to make sure you're scoring 5 points in every game, going turn one that you can, and then make sure you're setting yourself up for your second turn battle tactic to ensure that you're scoring at least. You want to be scoring the maximum amount of points every turn. Rocco had a video on it recently. I'm sure he can put it in a card somewhere.
Oh yeah, we could figure that out. But yeah, it's one of those things where if you know you're going to be given first turn, you want to set up for like a first turn battle tactic, whether it's something easy with like a taking over someone's terrain feature that's partially in their territory, or like if you're coming in from reserves, or if you're summoning or teleporting or whatever you're doing, to then know that you have a bunch of units that will die when someone looks at them, to set up that eye for an eye for battle round 2. I feel like that's a huge advantage to you.
Absolutely. Because of the spread out nature of this list, no one unit is particularly important to the list success. We're going to be generating our summoning points off of our Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, who heals naturally 1 wound on a 2+ at the end of each combat phase, and then he also has a War Scroll spell if he is getting desperate for hit points or for wounds. Uh, so you don't need necessarily the old school barbecue boys as much anymore. Uh, you could choose to do so, but I forgot how that was related. I've lost my train of thought.
No, you did great, Bradley. Because the barbecue boys. So before we had Bradley come on, Rocco made a list where he had me, not he. I had a bunch of 20 blocks of Bestigor that were backing up a 9 block of Dragon Ogres, where because I didn't want the Bestigor to be Galatian veterans because they'll just melt to a bounty hunter battalion. I was setting it up so that one of the Bestigor units in like a Dark Walkers army could be on my turn when I'm given first put into reserve, where it's like I'm faking out my opponent, and then the other one would be in range for my Herdstone to rally them on a 4-up. I had the unit of 10 Ungor in my back, where they're called the Barbecue Boys because you serve them up and roast them on an open fire to your Herdstone to generate more primordial call points. But Bradley's idea is so much better. It's great. I love the tech with the axe. I love not going in a Great Fray subfaction. I loved it all so much. My one note is moo. Thank you, Bradley. You got any closing thoughts?
Not particularly. Again, with this list, you're all about board control and setting yourself up to deny your opponent as much movement as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, understanding, and especially for big flying units, understanding and measuring your opponent's base sizes is going to be one of those tricks that you can learn to help you to combat some of our tougher matchups, like, for example, Dragons or Maw Crushers, to prevent them from taking advantage of that fly to fly right over your many, many screens. So that is one thing to consider as a closing thought.
Oh yeah, with just how big those bases are and how many of these minimum sized units or MSU that you have, you can make it so that sure they can fly, but if they can't land, they can't actually hit anything. And this also works with some of the endless spells where if they just can't fit, even like with Purple Sun, everyone's freaking out that Purple Sun just recently got a change where it now has to be within an inch of a model in order to kill it potentially, or at least do a bunch of mortal wounds to it. With this style of list that you're bringing, you can layer your tens of Bestigor so that none of your foot heroes will ever be at risk. And you could set up, especially going into Lumineth, if they aren't running Techless and they're running a bunch of foot heroes, or say a Lore Seeker, that you can mess up with a Wildfire Taurus to then have it be finished off by the Beastlord. That's a way you can proc your buff. If they're doing Sylvaneth and they throw a Spirit of Durthu up early, right? Cool. It killed 10 Ungor Raiders in Bradley's list. That's your front screen. And then you follow up with enough stuff and make it fight last so that it just gets taken down by all the Bestigor. And then you just move on from there. Mega Gargants, it's going to be a little rough, but again, with the Taurus moving 20 inches, a lot of these deployments are you're 18 apart. You're probably hitting something if it's Mega Gargants, and even then, with your running charge, you just send waves and waves of Bestigor crashing down and focus fire one Mega Gargant with a couple units here.
So you'd actually be surprised about the
Oh, please surprise me, man!
Matchup.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one thing to note is that the rule the Gargants have that allows them to pass over enemy units only works in their movement phase. And I was talking earlier about using your bases to prevent your opponent from actually fitting places. Beast of Chaos has more than enough movement to position itself in front of objectives to make it genuinely impossible, especially when you're modifying their charge rolls so that they can't move around you, to make it impossible for those Gargants to get on objectives. They might hurt you, but if they're not on your objectives, they're not doing anything. And a unit of 9 Dragon Ogres in range of its Herdstone can stand up to 2 Gatebreakers for the entire game if they're getting Mystic Shield and all that defense consistently, meaning that you can effectively disable 3 or 4 Mega Gargants without actually having to kill any of them, and then the 4 units of Bestigor getting in as many of them as you can into a Gargant.
Oh, sure. And then you just summon Bestigor too to refill the ranks as they die, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I like it. And what was the other? The other main army was infantry heavy slaves to darkness. And
this is going to be hell for them.
Go on.
No.
Maybe. Well,
Rocco.
Yeah.
I swore.
Oh, you can say hell. Okay, listen, you can't say
all the other stuff. Understood.
Thank you. Anyway, but yeah, okay, so Bradley goes in the bad boy corner. You can redeem yourself, Bradley. If you were going against an infantry heavy, like Chaos Warrior, Horde heavy, Slaves to Darkness army, what are you thinking? Just with your theory crafted list here.
I think you tackle it in much the same way you deal with other lists. Infantry heavy Slaves to Darkness have very, very killy infantry. However, if they can't reach you, then they can't hurt you. And you don't really care if you're losing your Ungor Raiders and your Gors. They're so cheap that if a unit of
like say 20 Chaos Warriors, 15, I don't know if they come in 10s or 5s anymore, but let's say it's a big unit, like the footprint of a Mega Gargant. Isn't it just reasonable enough to just body block them so they can't step on an objective?
Absolutely. That's going to be your key to victory in a lot of matchups here. It's kind of old school, like you're playing Beast of Chaos back in 2nd edition, is the way I would look at wanting to make Bestigor work. Admittedly, you're going to have somewhat of a tough time in the early game dealing damage. However, you can stall out their army until battle round 3, and then maybe you don't score a perfect turn battle round 3 there. But if you've kept your Bestigor sort of in reserve out of the fight as much as you can, as soon as that battle round 3 hits, you're going to be having so much rend that it's not going to really matter how all their like re-rolling save rolls and re-rolling hit rolls and their extra ward, because you're going to be tearing through all their armor save, and they're just going to be on the ward from their Chaos War Shrine, which admittedly you aren't going to have a lot of tools to deal with in this list.
No, but then that's where I think the summoning pool of Beast of Chaos can come in with maybe some cockatrices to shoot mortal wounds at it.
Absolutely. Or a Chimera would
Oh yeah.
do excellent there.
Oh
Just
yeah.
with its new monstrous rampage and all-out attack, I would put my good money on it killing a Chaos War Shrine between its shooting and its, if you can get that, if you can position it in that way where it gets that 9-inch to 7-inch charge from its native +2 on its War Scroll.
Oh yeah. And also, I want to add in one more thing too with the primordial call points, because as you've brought up, the new monstrous rampage is having the Shaggoth in the back, because you still get to do a monstrous rampage with it.
Absolutely.
So you're
You're
just
still
go on.
screaming for those summoning points in every charge phase, and
Yep.
that's one of the things I have on my list of Allegiance abilities not to forget, because although he's not charging and he's not in combat, that particular monstrous rampage, doesn't have any um, like prerequisites for its activation, only that it
Nope.
be a Beasts of Chaos monster, which a Dragon Ogre Shaggoth is.
Yeah. No, that's great. And again, at 10 wounds with all the healing, if your opponent is focusing down the Shaggoth with, let's say, Lumineth Realm Lord archers, right? I think that means they're not playing the objective game, because then all of your units that have pushed up to block them from being able to walk onto objectives and charge onto objectives, they limit their killing power of their archers to killing that hero. Or they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna snipe your Bestigor hero. Cool, man. The units of Bestigor are still there. We're summoning more anyway. It's happening one way or the other. Um, and at that point, if you've been careful with your scoring your secondaries here, with scoring the hold one, hold two, hold more, or whatever the battle plan is, and you've used your movement from your screens, the pregame movement from the Ungor Raiders, and everything else to just kind of trap your opponent in their deployment zone. It's cool if they table you at the end of turn 3, that they missed out on 3 rounds of fully scoring their stuff. And then as long as you're still good with summoning and fighting for objectives, you're going to win on points. Any other closing thoughts, Bradley, before we wrap it up?
You did mention that losing the general, and that is a big blow. However, you do have sort of a backup in the form of your Great Bray Shaman. If they
Oh,
haven't
yeah.
killed all your heroes, it doesn't particularly matter who's um, sacrificing to the Herdstone. And I think that
Ooh,
you do have the bodies here where, in that situation where your Dragon Ogre Shaggoth is sniped early by uh, high damage,
whatever.
high threat range, whatever,
Yeah.
you have the ability to make up for it. And while it does hurt in that you don't necessarily have other Beasts of Chaos monsters, as soon as you hit that uh, 5 summoning points to bring on a second cockatrice, that cockatrice can start doing that primal roar for you. So
Yeah, it could actually. That's actually really funny. Yeah.
it's very difficult to put down Beasts of Chaos summoning permanently without actually, you know, tabling Beasts of Chaos.
Yeah.
Uh,
And you've got so many
and
bodies, they'll never get close
absolutely,
enough to the Herdstone either to destroy it.
which is exactly why in this list I think that Protect the Herdstone is the perfect grand strategy for the army. It's more achievable than a lot of the other GHB, the new GHB grand strategies for specifically a Bray Herd focused list.
I
Uh,
agree. All right. Well, this has been great for me. Thank you, Bradley, Beast Lord, for coming on. Again, my only note is moo. It's probably backwards in the camera. I don't know how to fix it. Leave a like if you like this talk in this style of video. Leave comments for more stuff for us to cover. Thank you again, Bradley, for being a guest. You've been a guest on before, technically, because of some of the Beat Rocco Bat reps, I believe. We got to do more of those, bud. We gotta. The people want some more action. You can run this list and run me over with something. It'll be fun. Um, and yeah, as I like to say at the end of all of my videos, class dismissed. Bye. Say bye, Bradley.
Goodbye.